pandemic has exacerbated and created a slew of issues for Americans to think about, from talks of K-shaped recovery to the loss of millions of jobs. I'm Katherine Ross, and this is Coffee with Katherine. Joining me today to speak on some of these issues is Sallie Krawcheck, CEO of Ellevest. Sallie, we spoke around this time last year, give or take a month. It was right after this market tanked, and I asked for your investing advice at the time. I'm going to do that again. What do you think of this market?
Well, I'm trying to remember what advice I gave you, and I bet you the advice I gave you was to sit tight, don't try to make a whole bunch of bets, don't try to make a whole bunch of sudden moves, that the stock market tends to be upwardly trending over time. It certainly has been historically with volatility. It doesn't do this historically, it does that historically. And that advice would remain the same today. I don't care if you think the market's expensive or this stock is expensive or cheap. If you are trying to trade in and out, yeah, it typically is a loser's game.
In your opinion, is corporate America doing enough to ensure diversity through company ranks right now?
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. Or there would be much more diversity through company ranks right now. There is no research out there that tells you the diversity hurts. There is no research that says diversity leads to lower returns and lower client engagement and less innovation. Quite the opposite. The diversity, the friction of different backgrounds, different perspectives, different education, different skin colors, different genders, all of that, the friction of coming from different places and coming together with those different points of view and solving problems is a positive. And so if corporate America were doing enough, we would have more diversity.
So we've seen a lot of back and forth about these new retail traders coming and the rise of Reddit trading. And one key issue that you and I have talked about time and time again is how we can get women to invest and how we can make them more confident when it comes to investing. What can these brokerages like Robinhood do that want to bring people back into the markets and ensure confidence in them do to involve women in investing?
Well, that's what we're trying to do at Ellevest. When you're reading about the GameStops, what you're not seeing are pictures of massive numbers of women coming together on Reddit to, take a stock up and try to screw the short sellers. It's not a lot of women who are doing that. The way women tend to invest and want to invest is for their life goals. They really haven't seen it as a game, as, sort of a sport to be won, but instead, where we're finding real success at Ellevest is, okay, you want to buy a house in 5 years. This is what you need to invest out of each paycheck in order to make it. This is how much you can afford. You want to retire. This is what you do. Now, perhaps counterintuitively, when women invest, they outperform men. It's typically because they trade less, so they pay lower fees. And if you're trading less, you have less opportunity to get caught up in the energy of the moment and make a whole bunch of decisions, which, if you're emotional in making them, can be tough decisions. There's really been no generation of day traders swarming the market that have outperformed and become Bill Gates.
Sallie, Ellevest does such a good job of reaching women and making them feel confident about not only investing, but also finances. I mean, I've had a bunch of female friends come to me and say that they've actually gotten involved in investing because they've listened to Ellevest talks. And so when I'm looking at Wall Street firms and Wall Street in general, do you think that they have enough of a focus on specifically women?
Well, no, or we wouldn't have founded Ellevest. There are a lot of women's initiatives out there. Let's have a newsletter written to women about investing, and let's, get together when we used to be able to get together and have wine and talk about investing together. Ellevest was really the first business that said, all right, yes, marketing, let's have a newsletter, let's get together, of course. But is the underlying product the right thing? Is that built in a way that women want to engage with? And Katherine, we just talked a second ago about the trading, about trading Bitcoin or GameStop, and even in the regular trading, what you see on CNBC. Is that sort of buy low, sell high? Is that what women tend to be looking for? And the industry would tell you, well, it's their fault. They're risk averse, and so therefore they're staying away because they're risk averse. And we said, no, maybe there's something with the product that is not appealing to them, that sort of gamesmanship is not. Maybe it's being goals based. And maybe instead of it being women's fault that they aren't investing as much, that they are risk averse, maybe an industry in which 99% of investment dollars are managed at companies owned by white men and 98% of mutual fund dollars are managed by men, maybe that business is for men. And maybe we'll build and start the first company where we're 75% women, where we have built a company by women for women, the way women are looking to invest.
You mentioned Bitcoin. What's your thought on cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin right now?
Well, I think you break it into two broad things. Is Bitcoin for forever? Will it be the coin of the world? That's one question that I don't have a point of view on. And there's the other question about, should you be trading Bitcoin? I won't say investing Bitcoin because it doesn't really have fundamentals underpinning it now. And I say that is totally fine since there are no fundamentals. Take the money you were going to take to Vegas this year for the trip that got canceled because of COVID that you couldn't make, and go gamble that in Bitcoin or GameStop also, I guess, or whatever. But do not at this stage be betting your retirement on Bitcoin. It could go up. It could go up a lot. It could go down. It could go down a lot. But there aren't fundamentals underpinning it.
I want to turn our attention to the economy because you've been talking a lot about the She-cession, and it has yet to get a lot of media attention, quite frankly, in my opinion, at least. Now, we are seeing data that backs up that women are being unevenly impacted by this pandemic. How concerned are you about this data?
Oh my gosh, I'm beside myself. In fact, I can't believe we're this far in the interview and we're just talking about this. I am beside myself for so many reasons. First of all, women have disproportionately lost their jobs. Women have disproportionately had themselves at risk for their health because they're more frontline workers. Women who are privileged enough to work from home have lost productivity. Men who work from home have gained productivity, like 50% increase in productivity. Men are now being promoted at 3-to-1 to women. 1 in 5 or 4 women are looking at leaving the workforce. It is decades of progress that is at risk. And you look and you say, in fact, that's sort of bad enough. The second layer of it that's even more concerning is that it happened so quickly. And so we look and say, the economic and financial rise of women over decades, what a rickety foundation it was built on, that in the space of a year, and it really was months, that we could see that kind of backward momentum with the old gender roles kicking in. And there's a sociologist, Jessica Calarco, who said, I think for me, the line of 2020, which is what this has shown, is that other countries have social safety nets and the US has women. And so we have built our advancement on a pretty rickety foundation.
What can companies do? We have a rickety foundation, Sallie, as you just said. What can companies do to strengthen that foundation? How can we get women back in the workforce?
Yeah. Well, look, I think, enabling people to work flexibly, understanding that it isn't just about work, that the 9-to-5 workday that really made a ton of sense in 1953 no longer makes sense. And can your teams work asynchronously? Can there be flexibility where it's not what it's been, where, the women take the flexibility, the women take the parental leave, and then they get mommy tracked, but that these cultures change, which is better for everybody to have the flexibility for everybody. So I think there's cultural change that we need to see. I think there is public policy that needs to be enacted. We absolutely have got to have mandated paid parental leave. And I say parental for moms and dads, all genders. We need to have affordable childcare, et cetera. And then companies like Ellevest having real initiatives to help women recover. So we have, as you know, been all about helping women invest, helping women get their debt paid down, learning, coaching, et cetera, at Ellevest. And we recently rolled out the very first women-led business cashback program. So if you use your Ellevest debit card to shop at a range of women-led businesses, both local and national, you get cash back in your pocket or special offers. And we love this because 90% of women say, I want to shop women-led. I just don't know who they are. And so if we can provide that connection, that connectivity, then we can drive more business to women-led businesses, which also have been disproportionately hurt in the pandemic, and we can get money back into women's pockets. So you've got a win-win.
Yeah, and that I was talking to the Budgetnista earlier, and one of the things that she said is how important community is when it comes to finances, when it comes to just anything. You need community in order to really connect with people. Sallie, I'm looking at a McKinsey Women in the Workplace study, and I'm just going to quote this to you. It says, at the beginning of 2020, the representation of women in corporate America was trending in the right direction. This was most pronounced in senior management between January 2015 and January 2020. Representation of women in senior vice president positions grew from 23 to 28%, and representation in the C-suite grew from 17 to 21%. Now, those are great stats, and it's great that we're seeing more women in the senior management. I guess my concern with this is what's happening to women in mid-level, entry level.
Right. Well, so a couple of things. First of all, I will respectfully disagree that those are great stats. Women are 51% of the population. So we've had some progress, but women, even, oh, this is so amazing, look at everyone's moving forward, are way underrepresented. And that has fallen back during the pandemic. And then women who are the entry level positions, I fret and worry about them because, let me introduce a concept that I know, Katherine, you and I have talked about before, which is the gender wealth gap. So we spend a lot of time talking about the gender achievement gap, as you just did at work, the gender pay gap, 82 cents to a white man's dollar. But what we really should pay more attention to is the gender wealth gap, where women only have and keep 32 cents to a white man's dollar. Pre-pandemic, it was a penny for Black women and a penny for brown women. And that's gone backwards. It was going backwards before the pandemic because women don't invest as much and have more debt. It's gone further backwards. And so should we be worried about women who are at the sort of the lower down, the entry level positions? We should be so worried about them and how they're able to make it through and get back into the workforce.
I do have to say, I always appreciate talking to you because I tend to take on this like optimistic tone. And I love when you're like, well, it's great, yes, but no, let's take that a step back and really talk it through about, numbers are numbers and we can see way more improvement if we actually pay more attention to it. And I do really appreciate that always. So I want to ask you about the stimulus checks now.
You know what? I hate to say it. I think it's age. So I think Gloria Steinem has said that women are the only group that become more radical as we age, and that I'm not going to ask your age, but that I remember, when I first got in the workforce and you're in your 20s and you look around, you're like, look, it's all these women and me, and this is amazing, and everybody likes having me around, and everybody seems happy with me, and this is great, and yay, and my mom's a feminist. What a loser. Oh, go out and march, Mom. But, look, my generation, we have got, I remember when I got to Wall Street in the 80s, this is taken care of. We are taking over. Then you get into your 30s and you have the first kid, you got the dog, you got the second kid, you got the jerk boss, the kid's sick, you got the PTA, you got the whatever, and you are hanging on by your fingertips and you stop, you look around, you don't know what's going on. And then the kids go off to college, you get to your 40s, 50s, and then you look around and you say, where the hell are all the other women, for God's sake? And then the women in their 20s are like, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. There's so many of us down here, we'll take over later. And so I hate to say it, but I think you looking optimistically at it as your youth and me looking and saying, I feel like I've heard this before, is I won't say old age, I will say my experience.
No, I appreciate it because I think that it's a wake-up call that everyone needs to have, right? And you explaining it like that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that as I get older, and I'm already seeing friends get married and have babies and move out of the workforce. So that's definitely something that I would like to see less of. I'd like to see that perfect balance and whatnot. Women can have it all. We've talked about that. Sallie, talking about the stimulus checks, what would be your advice? I asked you the first round that we got last year, what your advice was then, but now that we're on the third check, how should women approach this?
Yeah, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. It's going to be different for everybody. For some folks, it's going to be, paying down the person, the company you owe who continually calls you and wrecks your dinner, et cetera. For some, it's going to be paying rent down. For others, it's going to be, we've got things sort of under control. Let me put it into a savings account. I know it's supposed to be a stimulus check, but if If you've got the ability to save it, save it. Pay down your credit card debt. For some people, it's going to be, I can finally breathe and go do a little bit of outdoor dining or something. I think it is so personal for everybody that, you need to do what you got to do and what is the biggest stress reliever for you in receiving that check.
When you say stress reliever, for some reason my mind just immediately went to like what we've been hearing a lot about our mental health, because obviously this has been a very trying time for all of us. And right now I've been hearing so many friends go like, oh, I do the 5-minute meditation in the morning, and that sounds great. But what about financial advice? Is there anything that we can wake up in the morning next to our morning meditation and do to kind of like relieve stress about our finances?
Yeah. First of all, I love this question. And we do, as women, hear about and talk about and think about holistic wellness. And there is a lot of, talk about self-care and wake up and meditate. And so, there's emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, physical wellness. So are you taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, right? We hear about that. We really very rarely talk about financial wellness. Despite the fact that money, even pre-pandemic, is women's number one source of stress. And so I feel like, sort of the hierarchy of needs, if we're not taking care of our financial health, then how are we going to really be emotionally healthy when that is pulling away at us and really eating at us? Now, the good news is that our research shows the number one driver of confidence in our ability to achieve our financial goals is whether we are saving and investing. It's taking action. It's not how much we've got saved. It's not how much we've made in investing. It's not the strong trade we made. It's not our relationship with our spouse or our job. It is, are you taking this individual action? And it's funny, Katherine, because over the holidays, I just was just sort of eating at me how much money's coming in, how much money's going out. Is my budget straight or not? And for days, I sort of had it itching in the back of my mind. And when I finally sat down and actually just laid everything out, the numbers were no better than I had thought they would be. But I just felt so much better about it. It's just like, okay, that is done. It was like a weight off of my shoulder. And we hear that again and again at Ellevest. We'll do an intentional spending workshop with people, or a couples workshop with people on money. And just the sense of, I thought it was going to be bad. It just wasn't that bad. And now that I have a direction and a little plan, I don't mean big P, but little P plan, I just feel so much better. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like it's conquering that step, right? Like you want to avoid it for so long, you want to avoid that bill, and then the minute that you pay, you're like, oh my God, why have I been avoiding it? That easy.
Like it's the task you put off for forever, and then you do it. It took 5 minutes. You're like, I can't believe I just, I spent more time worrying about it than I did actually just friggin' doing it.
And so you mentioned that you've been hearing that from women at Ellevest. What other trends, and what else are you hearing from other women?
Look, what I would say, since you and I probably last sat down and spoke, we've changed quite a bit at Ellevest. So, we really started as a digital first investing platform for women. We added over time some financial advisors, some certified financial planners. We added banking, not full service banking, but a debit card, savings, et cetera, to help people with their short-term goals. But I tell you what has really blown the doors off for us is women have been asking for coaching and learning. And I think really as the pandemic got tough, it was, I just need information, not the dry 400-page, book of information, but, time with an executive coach or a planner or a money coach in order to just figure out what's what. How should I be spending? How should I be budgeting? In what order should I be paying down debt? Should I be leaving my student loan? Just all those questions coming together with experts who understand, who've been there, and with other women really has surpassed our expectations as part of our new membership. And so we've really added to that, not expecting to, during the spring, summer, and the demand is so strong, we continue to add to it. So we're very much a digital first platform, but we're finding that combining it with that human touch and that human knowledge and that human interaction is really the winner for us.
Now, for other female CEOs watching this interview, what's your advice as we continue to deal with this pandemic? And it kind of feels like there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a blurry light right now.
I get it. Look, it's just, what I would say is that it's just lonely, and that finding a way to take care of yourself during all of the stress is really important. And I find there are mornings, not to overshare, there are mornings I just wake up with such a huge lump in my stomach. And if I don't go exercise right away, I carry it all day long. And so finding that way to sort of release the stress. I also drink, at night. I've absolutely, in the 360 days since we went, into the pandemic and shut things down, I have for sure on 360 nights had a glass of wine or two, for sure. But,
I am 100% there with you.
Absolutely. But, and also the other day, again, not to overshare, but I was like, the spring and the summer were so lonely. And I feel like I have a good network. Where was everybody? And then you realize that what I was going through, which is, as a venture funded company that is not yet profitable, should we cut? How deeply should we cut? What should we cut? I had a co-founder who was saying, let's lay people off, and trying to find our way through that. We didn't, by the way, which was a pretty courageous move given what the financial markets were doing at the time. And I thought, where was everybody? And it turned out that my strong network was all going through the same thing. And any number of them had to lay people off, and many of them had to do with COVID at the same time. And so I think we've all been through, women CEOs in particular, have been through real trauma and are only now just sort of catching their breath and coming back together, and refinding that community. But there was a time when it was every woman, I'm not going to say for herself, but every woman trying to sort of really figure out how to get through a tough time without having the access to her network that she typically would have.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that really speaks to how important it is, again, bringing up this community factor, because right now it's so easy to feel alone at all times, and it's so hard to reach out to people. Like, I don't know if you experience this, but sometimes I need to reach out to people and I don't want to inflict myself on them. And I know that that's not the right kind of thinking.
And because you don't know what they're going through. And so you reach out to someone, you don't hear from them, and then you hear back from them 3 weeks later, and they're, I had COVID, or I had to lay off X% of my, or I'm too stressed to speak right now. And it's funny, I was talking to my doctor. I went to go visit her for a checkup, and said, is everybody walking in here like, and she said, Sallie, it's just, everybody's different. And some people are skating through, and they feel, they're good with their family, and their job is good, and they're good, and it's like it's not even happening. Other people are just really devastated, and it's hard because everybody's experiencing this in a different way.
And small businesses are experiencing it too. So for those, especially women-led small businesses who we've talked about, are experiencing a lot of stress, whether it's just from dealing with their workforce, but also, not knowing what tomorrow is going to be like. With this stimulus package looking like it's going to get passed, what's your advice to business owners?
Yeah. Well, first of all, and women businesses went into this less financially robust than male businesses. They historically have gotten smaller business loans at higher interest rates, and not a little bit higher interest rates, quite a bit higher interest rates. And then, first round of PPP, many of them were really shut out. And so you've got a situation right now where any number of them are talking about, worried about making it to the summer. So, and again, many of them are in service industries or restaurants, and so they've been harder hit. So this is really just devastating. And again, this is why, we have put together the women-led collection at Ellevest to try to get more business from our large community of women to women-led businesses. I love to say men have played the game of business as a team sport for forever, right? You do business with each other, you give references for each other, you put each other on the board, you invest in each other's business, you talk each other up. you promote each other. That's just how it's been played. Women, somehow we've gotten taught from all these self-help books of how to get ahead in business that we sort of are on our own, and that, that our success is individually driven, which feels really great. Oh, I just have to do these things and I'll be successful. But it's been tougher for us as we've played the sport individually, not promoting each other, not talking each other up, because we were sort of taught not to. The research is actually pretty clear. And so how do we change that paradigm and change that game where we do business with each other and recognize we're not doing anybody a favor, right? That we are helping each other and the economy grow, and that the more women-led businesses, whether venture capital funded or Sally's Pizza on the corner, the better off not just they are, but we are, because the economy can be bigger. The economy can grow. There's no limit to its size.
And speaking of the economy, I mean, Janet Yellen acknowledged that the United States has been living with a K-shaped economy prior to COVID-19, and now we're hearing about the K-shaped recovery. So what can be done to help the economy, do you think?
Well, stimulus is a big step forward. The COVID leaving or getting to herd immunity is a big step forward. And then we've also talked about, the biggest growth in the economy came when women came into the workforce. And so as we think about how to recover, focus on getting women back into the workforce who have left, and focus on getting women to stay in the workforce. And we've touched on a few things. That mandated parental leave, paid parental leave, pays for itself very quickly. We tend to talk about it as an expense. Those pesky mothers wanting to be paid, having those pesky babies. But in fact, it's an investment. If you give a family the opportunity to be home at the beginning of a child's life, they are more likely to go back to work. If you don't, they're more likely to quit. And then you have to hire somebody new and train them, and there are hiccups between folks. And by the way, it pays for itself so quickly. I was a CFO. You give me any investment that pays for itself in a year, you do that all day long. And so we have to change our mindset to not, are we doing favors for these people? Are we making investments in our people in order to strengthen and grow our economy? And at 51% of the population, you can't have a truly robust economy without having the infrastructure to support women.
And I want to leave it right there, because that is the perfect statement to end this interview on. Sallie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Katherine, thanks for having me. Take care.